introduce the panel. Federica Brandizzi is one of our more senior plant scientists. She works in some really awesome imaging technology, which she won't have a chance to talk about, but she's a participant in the Great Lakes Bioenergy Research Center, which is now on, we hope, its third $125 million award from the Department of Energy at the University of Wisconsin. Eric Haig is the PI, the MSU PI on that grant. He's sitting next to her. Lisa Lapidus is from the Department of Physics, and she's going to talk, I think, or can answer questions about international collaborations and large-scale collaborations and interdisciplinary research. And Jinhua Zhao is an economist who is the director of the Environmental Science and Policy Program, which is, I think, a very successful center that we have on campus, which brings together a pretty diverse group of faculty. So maybe the best way to handle this is I'm going to open it up for questions and let you explore either how do you do things at MSU, or what are the barriers, or what are the issues, and I'll try to hand off the questions to the right people. So, question? Yes?
Quick question. How do you handle, or what type of barriers or challenges do we expect with industrial relationships?
We have, yeah.
So MSU is very proactive in trying to link your research with the industrial partners. For example, and this is personal experience, we came out with a technology in our lab that is based on genomic modification of plants. And the university, we asked the university first to establish an invention disclosure, which they did, and then it took the technology up to a patent, and then now is out for licensing. In all the process, MSU has provided funding. Now we are in the middle of actually at the beginning of the second year funding for that. All is based on a competitive grant acquisition, so you apply for a grant to MSU, and that is then vetted by a panel of experts. So some grants get declined because maybe the experts don't see the application that would entail a company. Otherwise, you get to the stage in which they support you, both financially, but also with the possibility to find an industrial partner. So as a biologist, I know very little about industry and what is the real world, what the real world wants outside my lab. And what MSU has been able to put together is a panel of experts that has directed my research towards, really gearing up the experiments towards what the industry would like to see. As a matter of fact, I'm meeting today at 4 o'clock with a representative from DuPont that is coming to talk to me about possible licensing and what they would like to see from my technology. All this was enabled by MSU. I didn't go to DuPont and talk to them. Actually, there are people at MSU that can put you in contact with industry. So it's pretty
there's another side of the collaboration with industry is sponsored research in your laboratory, or which we also have an office which supports those sorts of agreements and promotes that, so that we really don't want faculty wasting time and effort sort of sitting talking to lawyers. We would rather have our lawyers talk to their lawyers, and so we have a way to do that, and that office is called MSU Business Connect. And their sole objective is to help faculty get corporate sponsored funding to support their research. Any questions? Yes?
Yeah, this is a very simple question in one sense, but how do you suggest meeting other scholars at MSU with whom you might collaborate? I mean, I understand there would be a kind of organic connection that's close to one's field, but are there mechanisms for going
Yes, so that is a big problem. We have 2,200 faculty here on this campus, something like that. And I've been at MSU for nearly 30 years, and I still meet people and find areas that I didn't know we worked in, so it's not easy. One of the things we started a few years ago, which we call interdisciplinary research forums, and they are now, topic areas can be proposed by faculty. And the idea is that on a Friday afternoon, we buy the beer and the wine and the food, and we have about 3 or 4 talks, which are no more than 5 minutes in length, around a particular topic. We will help to organize the attendees and pay for the room and all of that stuff, and all the refreshments. And it's just a chance for people to meet each other. And I know we've now had at least, I think, 10 or 12 grant proposals that have gone out the door for people who just met for the first time at one of those events. So we're always looking for new ideas, and anyone can propose a topic, and we'll take it from there. Yeah, go ahead.
So I've been to those, and they're really good, but they weren't there when I arrived. And what I did, because my work really is interdisciplinary all the time. I work in physics and astronomy, but my work is biological. I simply ran through departmental web pages and just contacted people, and nobody ever says no. And most people will be willing to share resources. I certainly have gotten free stuff from just going and talking to people. So I think that's really the best way to do it, is to just start calling people, especially if you're new, because nobody's ever heard of you before. They want to find out what you're doing anyway.
Actually, that's the way Lisa and I met.
That's right.
We have a paper together. So the more and more I grow at MSU, I can see how much the university is really investing in trying to create opportunities for people from different fields to meet. So I was at my own MSU investiture for foundation professor, and there were people from all the fields. We have economics that day, and also mathematics, and the chair of the Department of Mathematics then connected with me because he saw what I was doing, and now we have a grant together through NSF. And he speaks his own language, I speak my own language, but somehow we managed to communicate. But what I was trying to say is that when you have the opportunity, use it. MSU really creates a lot of opportunities for people to get together. How to find out about these opportunities? You're gonna get 1 email a day, more or less, about these opportunities. You can't miss them. Okay, so the possibilities are there. It's just having the time to pursue them all. So the alternative is doing what Lisa was mentioning, which is great. Get your web page up as soon as you can, so that people can see what you do and connect with you, or you try to connect with people.
Jinla?
Now we have many centers on the campus, as Doug mentioned, and some of them are charged with the task of actually doing this. For example, my program, Environmental Science and Policy program, is a research. Part of my mission is really to support interdisciplinary research. So what we do is we have many sort of the kind of social events, open houses, and but most of the activities that we do are actually more thematic. For example, we would have seminars, interdisciplinary seminars, colloquial series, and we always reserve the last half hour to be the social kind of. You follow up with the speakers, with other fellow participants, and you have coffee together and you talk. So when I came here in 2008, that was how I got to know about the people. It's through the social events. And it's always, so when you start, always be patient. So it's gradually, you're going to, it's snowballing. Network building is like a snowball event. You know one person, and through this person, you know another person, and gradually your network just expands.
And just to follow up a little bit, a lot of the opportunities you have to meet other faculty members many of them will not be directly related to research per se. It could be some sort of a teaching event maybe, or a seminar series where they bring together to talk about different ways of teaching or leadership development or whatever. And you meet people, and I've gotten to start collaborations in ways where I met somebody and just found out, oh, you're in the microbiology department. You talk about the research, and you realize you have a common thread, for instance. So it's not just the things that are obvious, like go to a meeting or about a specific topic, but be open to be more broad, and you'll be amazed who you meet. And again, as it was pointed out, then it can snowball from there.
Yes?
I have a question about post-award administration, particularly with large interdisciplinary grants. Is that done centrally by the units, the college?
So, as a chair, you're probably interested in indirect cost return. Perhaps that is managed.
I'm thinking more from the help to the PIs.
From the help to the PI. So Eric can maybe talk about that, because the Great Lakes Bioenergy Research Center has probably 25 faculty.
Yeah, we have about 29 faculty, spanning 15 departments and 5 colleges. So it really is spread out all over the campus. We have a so the university actually provides support from indirect cost return for some number of full-time staff, basically, and 2 of those staff are specifically tasked with helping to run the business office. It includes HR, it includes all the business aspects of managing grants and doing the end of the year budget reports and things like that. And without that group of people, I mean, I simply couldn't run the center. There's no way. And so it's really helpful. And then because we span 5 different colleges, we actually report straight to Doug, actually. He's my boss, I guess you could say. And so then within his office, he can provide support as well. So there's a good support structure, and my advice is to, as much as possible, of course, negotiate and get it worked out in advance, so everyone's on the same page when the grant's submitted.
Can someone, that's a big scale grant, maybe a small scale grant you talk about.
So most of the people in this room are not going to be running that kind of a grant next year, but you could be a sub-award on somebody else's grant. So I was that when I was an assistant professor, and I have to recommend patience. I don't know what you have heard about OSP, but you need a lot of patience for the post-award part, no matter what, and you particularly need a lot of patience if you are the sub-award and the main award is somewhere else. And I kind of wish it was better, but you get the money eventually, and you just need to stay on top of it, because you can fall through the cracks.
Let me just add a little bit for the potential PIs for the others. Spend some time, just a little bit of time, try to understand your budget. This is a hard lesson that some of us learned. So we get the money, just do the work, and let someone else worry about spending and all of that, and then you run into problems. So just spend a little bit of time.
How do you work with people from different organizations and departments that have a different language than you? How do you communicate effectively with them? And then how do you manage maybe your competing interests? Because what I might need to meet, my tenure promotion might be different than what another person might need.
That's a really great question. It's something that the Great Lakes Bioenergy Center has been working on very hard for the last 10 years since we were funded. And you hit the nail on the head in terms of some of these competing interests. And there's a couple of things you have to start with. One is just constant communication. It is really critical to have constant communication, and that is perhaps the most important thing, so that everyone knows what's happening and you're on the same page and you're all moving in the same direction. Another important aspect.
Do you mostly do that through email, or is there another platform
So email is one way, but face-to-face meetings are great. And then MSU has a program called Zoom, which we use, and that's actually really quite good. And so we have many people use that as well. There are other conferencing systems, but Zoom works perfectly well for most things. And then also you have to understand the other cultures. And you have to take, and part of this is the communication, taking the time to understand the other cultures. And you're absolutely right. When you're, what one person needs for tenure promotion in one department is not the same as another department within the same university, and it's certainly not the same at a different institution. And so that's, again, where the communication comes through. And then I think another big challenge that's related is the challenge of making sure that people see themselves as being part of the group while still seeing themselves as independent investigators. We're all very good at being independent investigators. That's why we're here. But we have less practice, perhaps, at being part of a large team that's all moving in the same direction. And so working with people to make sure that everyone's understanding the needs and concerns of the other members of the team is really important. And so communication, and communication.
So just add a little bit. So if you have a group that is not working together, or you have doubts as for whether it's going to work well, so MSU has a NSF-funded project called Toolbox. So it's TOL Toolbox. The lead PI is Michael Ork in the Department of Philosophy. So that whole project is to study how interdisciplinary people actually work together. So there's a specific, there's a researcher in that team supported by AgBio that is helping different team students. So yeah, you can Google this Toolbox.
Yeah, Michael O'Rourke is his name, and the program is called Toolbox, and he's in the Department of Philosophy. And he'll do little workshops and programs for any project.
I just would like to underline something that Eric has said, and I think it's absolutely correct. Make sure that you know what the tenure requirement are specifically for your department. Some departments may not consider you a strong candidate if you don't have your own grant as a sole PI, for example. Or, yes, with a co-PI, but then maybe you have to be the PI. So perhaps you have 5 grants as a co-PI. Is that enough? So what I'm trying to say is that maybe it is important, especially at the beginning, to sit down with your chair and define what the tenure requirements might be. If the answer is publish well and bring money to MSU, there's not really a complete answer, right? Publish well, where? What are the expectations? Impact factor, we can talk about these things, right? And, it's important that these things are straight from the beginning so you know what targets you have to hit. Because also you don't want to get burned trying to get, in 1 year, 3 grants as a sole PI. You don't want to get burned because in the meantime you also have to publish. This is at least in the biological sciences. So again, my suggestion is to have a nice conversation with data in your hands. Okay.
So one more piece of advice in terms of the tenure. If you are very interdisciplinary and don't feel like you necessarily fit in the main objective of your department, they hired you because they're trying to branch out, then you can have problems when you come up for tenure because nobody in your department knows who you know. And so that was my problem. And so consider having that conversation early on too. Most departments want to figure out how to do this correctly. And so outside mentors are a possibility, or simply tutoring your colleagues and so they actually know something about what you do is another way to go. But they may not realize that they don't know who you know, and that's a real problem when it finally comes up for tenure.
MSB they have a few years elsewhere, what kind of advice would you give them for kids?
Yeah, so I came here from another university, and I would say that there were a couple of challenges related to the question that I remember. One was the fact that they didn't do the things the same way here, and to learn the new culture here, and I may have liked some things better, I may have liked some things not quite as well, but this was the culture here, and to learn to live within the culture that you're now in, I think is important. And another thing that I think is important is just making it clear to folks. Again, this goes back to communication, but making it clear what your prior experiences have been. And so sometimes why you came here may be important for people to know, or more importantly, why you left may be important for people to know. It may also not be important for people to know, and you need to think about that and make it clear. Because sometimes when you're writing documentation for things, you'll want to highlight certain things, because sometimes in the absence of information, people make inferences. And you may not like the inferences they make. And so so if you're concerned about them making some inferences which are not correct, then providing them with the appropriate information and the documentation, I think, is quite important.
So we're going to have to wrap it up here. Do you get one quick question?
I couldn't hear her question.
Oh, okay. It was about how do you manage moving from one institution with a little bit of part of your career already started at another institution and moving to MSU, and how to manage that, bridging that gap. Okay, thank you all very much.